and he put black people on TV, and people were like, "You can't do that." And he was
was
like, "Don't ever tell me what to do."
Good. Well, that's pretty good. Good.
I know.
Good show. Good
I know.
guy. All right.
I like
everybody.
it when people aren't racist. It makes me happy.
Well, that's always a good
when
sign.
people aren't racist, that works. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
All right. What am I doing? I'm hitting a button.
I don't know.
Here. Okay.
Good. Hey everybody, there's the music. That means the show is starting. Oh my goodness, it's the Tara Show. Oh, we've got a very special show. Oh, you're ready for the awesomeness. Fugelsang will be joining. Hey, it's Dublin and Devlin. It is Thursday. What the hey is the date? It's the 7th of August. And joining us very shortly is the brilliant genius known as John Fugelsang, the our fearless leader. He emceed on the Sexy Liberal tour. He has a brand new book coming out in a few weeks on September 9th called Separation of Church and Hate, which is such a great title. I'm shocked that no one has taken that title before.
I know.
I'm very
That's
excited.
So true.
I'm very excited. We both of us were lucky enough. John sent us a PDF, a galley, if you will, is what they call it in the biz, an early preview of the Separation of Church and Hate. And I'm about halfway through it because it's so dense and so good and so awesome. And I encourage everyone, if you haven't already pre-ordered John's book from Amazon, you can do so now. But we're going to be talking about this, and I think the timing could not be better because his book is all about parsing the truth about the Bible and kind of like getting rid of, like going through it and being like, here's where MAGA are being hypocrites about stuff, and here's how to talk about the Bible with people who claim to be Christians, which is great for me as an atheist because I'm no biblical scholar. I don't know about you, Devlin, or could you say that about yourself?
A little bit. Well, only because as much as John, he knows more, of course, but we have a similar background, and reading his book, it was clear. What's that noise? What do I hear?
It's me. What I want to do is be able to keep an eye on the chat, but I have to mute it, and I'm trying to find the mute button.
Okay. That was me. I thought it was something I did.
It's not you. It's never.
I heard myself. That's why I was like, where the hell is that coming from? No,
it's me being my own grandma and not being able to find the mute on my phone, which is dumb.
That's
so
fine.
I'll just go back and forth.
Well, John and I both were raised Catholic. I guess we can wait till he comes, and we have a few more things in common.
We have lots in common.
Yes.
But, I have lots of questions, but the timing can't be better because hypocrisy and the Bible seem to go hand in hand. Weird. And right now we're seeing a lot of very self-proclaimed devout Christians helping Donald Trump covering up the rape and sex trafficking of children. And I would posit that someone who truly lives by the teachings of Yeshua, a.k.a. Jesus, a.k.a. Jeebus, or as my twin nieces used to call him when they were little, Jesus. It's all so hypocritical. And I'm going to be interested to hear what John has to say about people who claim to be Christian, but making excuses for someone who behaves in a very un-Christ-like way.
Hey, John, hold on a second. You're in the green room.
Ladies and gentlemen, you could not have joined us on a better day. If it's your first time at the Tara Show, welcome. We are all about the truth here. And another thing that we like to do is talk to people who also care about the truth. And we're incredibly lucky here on the Political Voices Network / Sexy Liberal Verse. There he is. Look how handsome. Everybody that is a part of the Political Voices Network universe is incredibly good looking and smart.
I think
so. As exemplified by the man in the middle of this Tara sandwich. Please welcome John Fugelsang to the Tara Show.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hello, Tara. Thank you
it's been a long time
for letting
coming.
me drag your show down to my level. Thank you.
Are you kidding?
No, you're going to bring up the discourse exponentially because you're wicked smart. You're a smart guy.
Right. I'm just.
Thank you. You're welcome. I mean, it's just, first of all, the title of your book, Separation of Church and Hate, is so brilliant that I said I was shocked that no one came up with it before, but it just points to your genius brilliance. And it's coming out on September 9th. People can pre-order it right now at Amazon.com. And your timing of joining us here on the Tara Show couldn't be better, because we're seeing mass hypocrisy across the MAGA cult of self-proclaimed devout Christians. And on the one hand, seem to be devout Christians who follow the teachings of Jesus, and yet they're making up a lot of excuses for a sex trafficking, rapist, pedophile. So, John, what are we supposed to take from this entire experience of the Epstein files, where they're being lied to every single day, but they claim to love the Bible and live?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you invited me here to talk about this, because this is sort of what keeps me up at night. Let me just say, the only way to follow both Donald Trump and Jesus is if you've never read either one of their books. That's the only way you can follow both. Because, and here's the nice thing, atheist friends, you don't need to believe in the Bible as literal fact to use it against these blaspheming frauds. But the only thing Donald Trump and Jesus have in common, they spent a lot of time around prostitutes, and they both used ghostwriters. And that's really it, guys. That's it. You have to throw out and violently reject and give a pasty middle finger to the actual teachings of Jesus across the board if you're going to support Donald Trump. And you'll notice that when Donald Trump ran for office and he tried to appeal to the conservative Christians, did he ever promise to, did he ever say, I'm going to fight for the things Jesus talked about? Did he ever say, I'm going to do the things that Christ commands? No, he said, I'm going to put you first because you have been persecuted. And that's one of the hallmarks of fundamentalism, is this nonstop persecution narrative. Whereas we are so abused, it justifies anything we do to other people. And this penchant for victimhood that's always there. And that's how Donald Trump sucked up to the evangelical right. Not by promising to do anything the brown-skinned, homeless, Jewish, Palestinian faith healer from Nazareth did. I mean, Jesus lays it out in Matthew 25, what his whole shtick is about. In the parable of the goats and sheep, also known as judgment of nations. That's where Jesus reveals he's going to judge individuals and nations based on four things: how they care for the poor, how they care for the sick, how they welcome the stranger, and how kind they are to people in prison. Nothing about how much you scream at women outside clinics, nothing about how much money you give at the church, nothing about how much you persecute transgender children. That's it. So this movement uses Jesus as a prop. They despise him. And I got tired of seeing my parents' religion used as a cloaking device for hatred. So this is a book that's a guide for believers of any faith, or atheists or agnostics, how to use the Bible when debating these rat bastards.
And it couldn't be more timely. And I love the way you put it. Christianity is under attack by the people who Jesus warned us about. And that's how we have to frame it too, because they're not, and I say this all the time, that I wish they were as Christian as they pretend to be, because we wouldn't be having all these battles with them at all.
Yeah, we wouldn't have any problems if they were as Christian. We wouldn't need Social Security and Medicare if they were as Christian as they pretend to be.
Right. I mean, Jesus, and I mean, we have a lot in common. Your mother was a nun. My mother was a nun as well.
I know. Yeah. What a club. What a club.
I know. But it was a little different. I was reading your book. So your mother was a nun and your father was a brother as well. It's just a real, an interesting love story, I thought. But my father was a garbage man. So my mother was a nun. So. But they were both in Brooklyn at the same time. I wonder if they knew each other. Really?
Well, she was from the South, and she was being transferred over as a nurse to work with lepers in Africa.
Oh, okay.
And she was in Africa for many years, but for whatever reason, they briefly stopped her and stationed her in Brooklyn before they sent her to Africa, and that's where my dad met her. He fell madly in love. He could never say he was madly in love, so he carried a torch for 10 years and sent her lots of headlines about the civil rights movement in Vietnam while she was off in Africa.
Yeah. Now my mother wasn't that progressive, let's put it that way. But I didn't even know my mother was a nun until my grandmother died, and we found pictures of my mother as a nun, And my sister and I thought we were looking at Halloween, and then it was, oh, well.
I had a similar experience. I was spending the summer down south with my grandma when I was 7, and I found a box of photos. And my mother was dressed very differently from the rest of the family in all of them. She was dressed like an angel. And when my parents got down south to pick me up at the end of the summer, I told them, I said, I know that you used to do this, and Dad, you used to do this.
Oh, wow.
And my parents, they made me promise that I would never tell anyone. And I had to keep it a secret my whole childhood. It wasn't until I debated Jerry Falwell on Bill Maher that my mom gave me permission to tell her story.
Oh, wow.
See, that's weird. How come maybe it's that generation. It was where they kept everything so close and everything was I was like, why is this a secret? It's not like you were a prostitute or something. Why did you hold this as a secret for so long? And then, of course, it's just emblematic. Yeah. I wish I knew more about her, but she was very tight-lipped about the whole experience. I know she was a teacher. She didn't go to Africa or anything like that. But I don't want to talk, make this about myself, but also
That's
I just
okay.
want to, talk about what we were raised. I was raised Catholic as well. I went to CCD and all of that stuff. And now I'm a Buddhist, so I always found that to be more humanist and just more like common sense.
I get it. You're all emptier than now. I get it. Yeah.
Right. No. I do the kind of Buddhism that is that demands social justice. It's Nichiren Buddhism.
I tried to convert, but the Dalai Lama said I was too empty to join. So
Exactly.
I tried converting to Judaism when I was 15. I tried to convert it into Judaism, but my rabbi said I was too neurotic to ever be Jewish. So I can kind of relate.
Right. But I couldn't get with the Christians because I just, saw that hierarchy bullshit. And I was like, what do you mean? As a woman, I can't be as close to the divine as this dude? Who, I mean, later on we found out one of the priests of my church, of course, was a pedophile. So and they're hanging out with all the dudes.
At least he was a pedophile with a penis, which meant he was okay being a priest, and God wouldn't be offended. Well, but that's what radicalized me. The first thing that made me kind of realize that maybe I wasn't going to last forever with the Vatican was this insistence that 51% of the population were unfit to say Mass, that if the Virgin Mary came back, she was unfit to say Mass. And one of my favorite things in writing this book was all the discoveries I made writing a chapter about feminism, because it's true. I mean, in this world of the Bible, women have it rough. It's like the gospel according to Ike Turner. I mean, women are property.
It's a great line.
Women are unclean in the eyes of God. You're property of a man. Menstruation, boy, these men who wrote the Bible, they did not understand it. They did not approve of what you icky people do. And then this guy, Jesus, comes along, who overturns all of these old taboos, right? Like they never taught us as a kid why these Jesus stories were so revolutionary. When he's teaching Mary, and Martha's cleaning the house, and Martha's mad because Mary's being educated and not helping, and Jesus says, hey, Martha, calm down. Well, they never said it was illegal for Jesus to teach a woman, that they were breaking the law, and that Jesus is literally saying to women, an education is more important than housework. In that story, when the bleeding woman pushes through the crowd to touch Jesus's hem of his garment because she's been bleeding for 12 years. It's a great Sam Cooke song. Well, when she does it, what we didn't know was that by going in public, she was breaking the law. She had not been allowed to go in public because men wrote the law and said that a woman bleeding is unclean ritually in the eyes of God. So this woman broke every law by endangering the entire crowd. She made Jesus unclean in the eyes of God by touching his garment. Jesus turns around, says, who touched me? She says, me. And he says to her, daughter, you're healed. It's the only time in the Bible Jesus ever calls anybody daughter. And it's to a woman who literally broke the law to make him unclean. So this woman broke the taboo, and Jesus ends the taboo for good. Time and time again, he's the biggest feminist in the entire book. And then you get to the part where you realize that his ministry was funded by women. Wealthy women were the ones who paid for Jesus and the apostles to go do their business. There were 3 women who went everywhere. Mary and Martha and Mary Magdalene went everywhere. You'd think it's 15 apostles, right? But the men who wrote the Bible said, no, 12 apostles, 3 groupies. So they sold T-shirts at all the big gigs, right? So I grew up like with this version of religion that was about love and about sacrifice and about being there for others, about service. And I grew up like
Right.
so many to find no, it's been hijacked by this mean little racist
Yeah.
tax-free clique. So I
Right.
wrote this book for anybody who has to deal with a Christian nationalist in their family, in their job, in school, in their social media feed, because the deal is you don't need to believe in the Bible as literal fact to call them out for being against Jesus on
Yep.
every issue that divides us.
Yes. And
What
this
I
is
love
what.
about this That's what I
Sorry,
love
Tara.
about the book. Sorry. It's just, I was raised Jewish and had a bat mitzvah and all of that. I'm totally atheist now. And I actually challenged my rabbi so much that I just like quit because I didn't like the answers I was
Did you
getting.
slam
Like I
the
wasn't
door on the
getting,
way out? I hope.
I
Yeah.
did not. What started for me, and I'll tell us as quickly as I can, it's that when I was in Hebrew school, they showed us the movie Ticket to Heaven. And so this is going back to 1981. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, John, but it's a great movie about the Mooney cult, basically. It's a
Yeah. Yeah.
dramatization of a guy who went and got his friend out of the Moonies. And Kim Cattrall is in it, and so is Saul
Oh,
Rubinek.
look at that.
And it's a really, but it's
My book was just attacked by the Washington Examiner last week, so I feel a
Oh.
very
Perfect.
personal connection to the
Perfect.
book.
Congratulations.
Go ahead, please.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah.
doing it
And
correctly.
it's perfect. Right. But they
Go on,
showed
Tara,
it to us.
please.
We sat in our sanctuary, and they showed us this movie about, and it as an example of why cults are bad. And there's a scene where they're sitting together in a sanctuary, and someone is standing up front doing all this stuff, and they're responding. They're doing a call and response. And I said to my friend who was sitting next to me, "How's this different from what we do?" And she was like, "Shh." She was like, "What?" And I said, "How is this different from what we do? Because we sit here together, and there's a rabbi, and there's a call and response, and we're speaking in a language I don't even understand. How is this different?" And so for me, like that was an awakening for me. Like it was a
Yeah.
group think, and that group think is bad, and that this is they organized religions, that people who oversee a priest, a rabbi, an imam, they want a group think, and they don't want individual thought. And that's what we see in the MAGA cult. Individual
Right.
thought is not welcomed, and it's all groupthink, which is why we see the same messaging on social media. And so the question is, if there's, and the statistic that you start off with, like 2.4 billion people are believers, 5.5 billion are not, but they're the ones who get the bulk of the conversation, and they're louder than we are. Like, how does that happen? How do we get here?
Well, first off, I wrote this book for atheists as well because there's lots of people who can make the distinction between religion and faith, or religion and
Right.
belief, right? Like faith doesn't have a middleman. Organized religion requires a middleman between you and the commander in chief, whatever he or she or they or it may or may not be. And for me, I know that they like to say the largest growing religious group in this country are Mormons, or maybe Islam. More recent studies say it's none of the aboves. I think the largest growing religious group in this country are people who were raised religious but now consider themselves spiritual because they are turned off to the hypocrisy of these men in dresses and funny hats.
Yep.
Just
Yep.
because you
Yeah.
don't subscribe to a particular theology, you don't have a particular theism, it doesn't mean that you are a spiritually empty person. It doesn't mean that you don't believe in something. You don't have to use the word God to describe the great mystery, and you can be in love with the great mystery and not call that devotion a religion if you don't want to. I mean, I think
Right.
what's going on now with with deconstructionism and the ex-evangelical movement is really inspiring because people are finally realizing at this point in human history, you don't need a middleman between you and the Almighty. Now, I'll be the first to say, atheists, yeah, we're arguing about Bronze Age goat herders who thought this world was flat. I get it. But the fact is, I'm not here to defend organized religion. And this book is not an attack
Yes.
on organized religion, and it's not against
It's really
organized
not.
religion. It's an attack on hypocrites and mean people who
Yeah.
use organized religion. Didn't invent hate, but hate has always found voice in religion. And it's meant to show that if you're claiming to be a Christian and hating on anybody, you're not a fucking Christian. And the reality is, if your church is telling you who your enemy is, instead of telling you to
Yeah.
love your enemy, you're not really in a goddamn church according to the New Testament.
Right.
So
Right.
I wanted to write something for anyone of any kind of belief system, saying, here's the guy in the Bible, here's what he says, and this movement doesn't give a damn about Jesus. Okay, they don't care about anything
That's
but
right.
power. Christian nationalism does not care about anything but power. Same with fundamentalism. They don't care about abortion. If they really cared about abortion, they'd be fighting for sex ed in the schools. They'd be fighting for easier access to birth control for everybody. They don't really care about immigration. If they really cared about undocumented immigration, they'd be locking up the employers who put the giant help wanted sign at our border. They will never, ever try. Republicans will never take down the help wanted sign at our border. Look at Trump right now protecting illegals who are working in the agricultural sector. Again, Jesus commands us to welcome these people. They're not illegals. They're Christian refugees. So you don't need to believe in the book as literal fact to use it against these revolting frauds. And I tried to take every issue that divides us, abortion, LGBTQ issues, feminism, healthcare policy, poverty, gun safety, even sex hangups, and show how these loudest, most obnoxious Christians, they don't know this book. And they're counting on you not knowing this book. And you don't have to believe in this book to take their camouflage away from them.
That's right. And it's
they hide behind a cross to take a dump on a Bible. That's the Caroline Levitt way. They hide behind a big shiny gold cross to defecate on a New Testament.
Right.
And it's what I love about your book is that you literally give us cheat sheets to help us, like those of us who don't know the Bible very well. You make all of these help us make counter arguments. And my favorite one that I've gotten to so far is the list of polite abortion questions for right-wing loved ones.
Yes.
That one in particular. And number 17, the final one on the list, is my favorite one because it's like, it basically says, when does someone else's pregnancy become your business? When is it? When does someone else's body become your business? And it really just does come down to the people who believe that they know the Bible when they quote it, but they really don't.
Yeah, well,
and
they
this
put up a tree
gives
in their house.
us
They put up
the way to push back. And
they put up a tree in their house once a year, and they hate Muslims. That makes them Christ followers, right? That's all it takes.
And masturbation, right? As long as your son knows your masturbation habits, then I guess
that's right. If you have an accountability app in your prayer closet,
I handle that issue with both hands in this book. By the way, I take on. I grab masturbation.
You grab that and you really
I go all the way
tug
with
that
it.
issue till it's.
Abortion is the issue that got us where we are right now, right? Like when I was if you grew up in the 70s or 80s, you grew up at a time when Christianity became all about men forcing American citizens to be pregnant against their will and pretending it has anything to do with the Bible. Now, Jerry Falwell was a segregationist, and when segregation ended and Nixon went down in flames, these guys had nowhere to go. They had no big issues. In the 1970s, their biggest issue was the fact that Jimmy Carter's IRS was going to take away tax-exempt status from schools that practiced racial segregation. That was their big issue. Like when Reagan ran in 1980, he talked more about Jimmy Carter's IRS. And Falwell was a guy who had built whites-only schools. He supported apartheid. He was a segregationist. I never knew this as a kid growing up because the news I watched every day that showed Jerry Falwell and introduced him as a Christian leader never told us. I debated him on Bill Maher in my 20s, and I still didn't know that he'd been a segregationist. It took years for me to find it out because we whitewashed this history. They took on abortion 5 years after Roe v. Wade. 5 years after. Like the first time Falwell ever mentioned abortion in a sermon was 5 years after Roe. The most controversial thing about it was how not controversial it was. But over the course of the 1980s, they managed to completely restructure American Christianity. And now 2 generations of American Christians have grown up thinking that you're supposed to force rape victims to be pregnant by their attacker against their will, or you're not a good Christian. They don't tell you that the Bible's never against abortion. God asserts that a fetus is property in Exodus chapter 21, and a woman's life has more value in God's eye than a fetus. You don't need to believe any of this is literal fact to know this is in the damn book they are using to take rights away from people. I mean, God gives detailed abortion tips for pregnant unfaithful wives in Numbers chapter 5. Jesus was against the death penalty, totally against the death penalty, but they'll never mention that. And so now what they've done is they got the followers of Jesus to vote against everything Jesus ever talked about by talking about abortion, which Jesus never talked about. No care for the poor, no welcome the stranger. They despise his actual commandments.
It's incredible. Wow.
Yeah,
They've been
so
so
they're all a bunch of
devious.
frauds.
Right. And that's the thing. I always talk about this too, about abortion, how the Democrats, I feel, are leaving this, they're really conceding the argument to the Republicans when the way that it should be approached, in my opinion, is the fact that criminalizing abortion does not reduce the abortion rate. In fact, the abortion rate goes down under Democratic policies.
That's correct.
So
and it raises the infant mortality rate. The infant
Exactly.
mortality rate has gone up 8% in Texas because women are forced to give birth to babies
That's
that
right.
have no chance of survival in their very brief, horrible lives.
Right,
Thanks,
and
Christians.
Exactly, and I don't know why the Democrats don't say that. Why people don't know that criminalizing abortion doesn't reduce the abortion rate, and that the abortion rate now is up after the corrupt and illegitimate Supreme Court
always.
overturned Roe. So that's where we
Always.
are.
I want them to go farther. I want them to say that criminalizing abortion has nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus.
Yep.
Nothing. Jesus is against the death penalty. He overturns eye for an eye in his first big gig, that one on that mount that they never try to quote. You'll notice they're always trying to put, like, the 10 Commandments up on a classroom wall. Never anything Jesus actually says.
That's so
Jesus
true.
reduced the 10 Commandments to 2, which would get him banned from teaching in the Louisiana public school system now.
Right.
And these guys hate it. They hate it as a prop. They wave Jesus around as a prop.
It's so sickening.
Yeah. So this is and by the way, I want to also say you'll be surprised at how good it feels to call these people out. Jesus taught me the pleasure of calling out pious religious frauds. He does it all the time.
That's right. He's not, and he's the one who flipped the tables. We all know about that. He wasn't meek about, and that's why they crucified him. I may correct me if I'm wrong. He was crucified by the conservatives. He was cutting into their...
by the conservatives.
Yeah, so it wasn't the Jews or the Romans, it was the conservatives.
Oh, it was the Romans. We can say,
the conservatives.
We can say it was the Romans.
Okay.
No, they spent centuries blaming the Jews, but the reality is...
Wasn't us. We did not do that.
He was tortured by Romans, tried by a Roman governor, scourged by Roman soldiers, had to carry his Roman-made crucifix to the Roman execution site of Golgotha,
of the Roman
where
form
Roman soldiers nailed him to a Roman cross,
Correct.
and they put a sign on his head to mock that he was Jewish. That's what the Romans did. Or the Romans took his body down. Or if you're Glenn Beck, killed by the Jews, right? Like that's how they do it.
Well, he was killed because he was cutting into their money. I mean, that's what I...
Well, first off, he was killed by the only people in the Bible we could call white by contemporary standards. But if you ever say the Italians killed Jesus, I have relatives who'd have a heart attack over that.
Right.
But
that's true. You could frame it like that.
The reality is conservative religious power aligning with authoritarian government is literally what killed Jesus, and it's literally what's taking over our country now.
Yeah, because he was telling them they didn't need to pay for a ritual bath. So he was cutting into the money of the authorities.
Some of the Pharisees, some of the Pharisees. Jesus was friends. One of the mistakes we make is grouping all the Pharisees together and saying any religious conservative intolerant is a Pharisee. That's obviously not true, and these are the forerunners of modern rabbis. Jesus was friends with a lot of Pharisees. He hung out with them. He may have been a Pharisee himself. He was friends with Nicodemus, but again, it's the ultra-conservative ones, time and time again, who keep trying to kill Jesus and who will ultimately align with authoritarian government to do it. Jesus was a peaceful, radical, nonviolent revolutionary, hung around with lepers, hookers, and crooks, never spoke English, wasn't American, anti-capitalism, anti-death penalty, anti-public prayer, Matthew 6:5, anti-public prayer, never anti-gay, never mentioned abortion, never called the poor lazy, never fought for tax cuts for wealthy Nazarenes, long hair, brown skin, homeless, unarmed,
Jew,
anti-slut shaming, Palestinian liberal Jew. That's the guy.
Woohoo!
Right, and he never said anything about gay people. He healed that centurion's slave.
We go there. Right? I go there in this book. Yeah.
You do.
So-called slave, his boy.
It's one of my favorite stories. He heals the centurion's slave. And you're a kid reading this, you're like, oh, well, that's cool. They were occupying his land, and he still healed the slave. When you get a little older, that story's kind of weird. Why would an occupying general seek out a local homeless Jewish mystic faith healer to come into his house and heal a common slave. And then you learn that in the original Greek, the word they used was pais, meaning beloved boy. So what do we know about our Romans? We know that they would leave their wives at home and bring their boys on the road. We know bisexuality was very common as long as you were on top and not the bottom. It wasn't gay for the Romans.
That's right.
So I mean, and again, it makes the apostles must have been thrilled at this one, but it makes it all the more powerful to think that this guy is a colonizer and he's fucking a teenage boy. Yep. And Jesus says, yeah, he's healed. I mean, you can understand why the apostles would be so disgusted at this. But Jesus is never anti-gay, never even slightly.
That's
and in Matthew 19, I have a whole piece in the book where I argue Jesus says gay men are born that way.
And how does he say that? Because I need this.
Okay, so here's a big one. They use this one. They use this one against gay marriage all the time. It's become very common in the last few years because they can't. They try to use Leviticus, you shall not lie with a man as with a woman. That's an abomination. Leviticus 20:10 commands you to stone adulterers to death. So these guys can work that out with Donald Trump on their own. They don't follow Leviticus. But in Matthew 19...
Marjorie Taylor Greene. Anyway, all right. Yes.
Jesus has this line where he says, male and female God made them. A man will leave his family and cling to his wife. And they'll say, there you go. Jesus says male and female. He made them. No gay marriage. When you actually read Matthew 19, it's a story of some of these conservative Pharisees trying to trip Jesus up, and they bring up how Moses' divorce laws were. If you're tired of your wife, kick her to the curb. A divorce could be a death sentence in biblical time. And but all. If you no longer delighted in her, you could say, "I divorce you," and it was done. That's how biblical marriage was.
Wow.
Jesus comes out here as a feminist, because again, for a woman kicked out of the house, unless you had family to go to, it was either prostitution or begging. You're done. And Jesus says in Matthew 19, if any of you guys divorce your wife for any reason other than her cheating on you, you're an adulterer and you've made her an adulterer. You're supposed to stay with her for life, guys. Right. It's not Jesus coming out against gay marriage. It's Jesus coming out against straight divorce. And these people support Donald Trump. Now, I happen to believe that Jesus, being a feminist, would not want to keep women trapped in dangerous marriages today and would probably support divorce now. But 2,000 years ago, it was a whole different playing field. He was fighting for women's lives. And then he says right after that, he goes, look, I know these divorce laws I'm giving you are pretty heavy, but there's three kinds of men it doesn't apply to. And this is the part they never talk about. Jesus says there's three kinds of guys who are never going to be getting married. And so these divorce laws don't apply. There's men who, and he uses this umbrella term for men who will never marry, called eunuchs. Oh. So the first one is men who were born eunuchs, men who were made eunuchs by men, and men who became eunuchs for the greater glory of God. In other words, going backwards, men who became eunuchs, they became celibate for religious asceticism. Right. Men who were made eunuchs by men, they were castrated. When he says men who were born eunuchs, he's not talking about the astronomically small number of boys born with no genitals. He's talking about boys who you know when they're born that they are never going to be marrying a woman. Right. And Jesus says, for those who can accept this, they should accept it. And then he goes off to pray with some kids because Jesus is against being a dick. And he's never against gay people even slightly. So the biggest New Testament verse they weaponize against gay marriage is literally where Jesus says gay men are born that way.
Wow. That's great.
And they don't even know that. That's my favorite part of all of this is that
of course they
think that they think they're doing something and they're doing the opposite of what they're doing. So, and it just makes us feel a little bit smarter. Like, I don't know, if I'm quoting the Bible better than someone who claims to be a Christian, there's an imbalance there because I don't believe it in the way that they do. And one of the quotes that I love from your book is a sizable chunk of this historic, wonderful, brutal book are in fact myths that nobody takes literally, which is great. That's great to know because as someone, again, who doesn't live my life that way, I don't believe in it. I don't believe in all of this stuff. It helps me be a better person online when I get into these discussions because now I don't, it's not just me thinking this stuff. Like you who know so much about this and are educated in this and grew up in it are saying things that I have been saying like my whole life. And I just feel like justified and vindicated for all of my takes. Like I once had a whole room full of Southern Baptists at the University of Georgia get very mad at me
What?
in
I'm
in a
shocked.
I know, shocking. In a philosophy class, because a philosophy in a group in my philosophy class were tasked with proving beyond a shadow of a doubt the existence of God, which you can't do.
Huh.
You can't
You
prove
can't
it,
do it,
right?
no.
You can't
No.
prove it. And that's the point of that exercise. And all they did was stand up and read from the Bible. And I was like, hi, you
Yeah.
can't do that because that's not a
No.
textbook that fell from the sky.
But again,
So
that's the opposite of faith isn't doubt. The opposite
Right.
of faith is certainty. You don't
right.
ever get to have certainty in religion. That's why it's called faith.
Yeah.
And so it's these smug people who know how things are. And no one
Right.
knows dick. No one knows anything. Atheists, believers, y'all have one thing in common. No one knows
Yeah.
shit. So
Right.
it's when these people know the absolute truth and then they just feel like, well, God really wants me to impose this on you because I
Yeah.
care so much. For God.
It's
That's-
fun how they cherry pick the Bible in the same way they cherry pick the Constitution to suit
Yeah,
a
they-
current
they-
argument.
They will overlook welcome the stranger, just like they'll overlook the words
Yep.
well-regulated militia. But
Yeah.
I find, and I've grown up with this, and I've argued with these folks my whole life, Tara. I know how it is. But I do find that if you actually engage these people on Scripture, right, something can happen. You probably won't sway them. You will sway the bystanders. You'll sway their wives and their kids and everybody listening at the cookout. That's who you can reach. But something else happens. If you can engage them by using Scripture, I find that even if you don't pull them over, they will appreciate, we're talking if this is your family, your
Right.
coworkers, they'll appreciate that you tried to engage them using the text, using the book they
Right.
claim to get their beliefs from. I find
Right.
you get a lot farther with these people by using Scripture to show that Jesus was not an immigrant-hating homophobe, than if you just call your uncle an immigrant-hating homophobe.
Right. Wow,
We can't hate
yeah.
these people. We can't hate them. They're not nationalists. They're our
Yeah.
family. They're our friends from high school. We have to beat them. We can't hate them because hate makes you stupid. Hate makes us act like
Right.
them.
Right.
One of
Right,
my
and it-
favorite memes, I'll tell you this and then let you go. One of my favorite memes of all of this is it's a drawing of Jesus, and then he said, I said I hate figs.
Yeah.
Well,
You
this
can't
is
be a homophobe and follow Jesus. Like you can't do it. I mean, he
Right.
says in Matthew 25, how you treat the lowest of people is how you treat me. Like
And-
these
yeah.
people haven't read the damn book. And that's
what's
why they
so
get away with
irritating.
bullying
Yeah.
us.
How they have been able to co-opt Christianity and patriotism, that they have no business in calling themselves patriots or Christians, because they are the hypocrites that Jesus warned about, and using Christianity as a cudgel and to divide people is just so infuriating. So watching
Well, that's why I
Marjorie
kind of-
Taylor Greene on her, every Easter, Jesus is risen and all this. Well, you always got to tell me what a Christian you are, because I guess you never show
Exactly.
me, really.
I don't see you at the border with blankets and water for the strangers we're welcoming. No. You're exactly right. And these people have done this throughout all of history. This is the whole history of religion. And one of the things I wanted to do with this book, because it's not anti-religion, it's not
No.
anti-people of faith, it's anti-being a
Exactly.
hypocrite, it's anti-being a racist dick. The whole history of Christianity has been Christians using the Bible to control and Jesus followers resisting. And one of the things I wanted to talk about in this book is that there is a true history of Christianity in America, and it has always manifested
Right.
itself in resistance to Christian nationalism. I mean, when Rome took over, suddenly it went from being a little picked on sect to being a big imperial religion that could pick on
Yep.
smaller religions.
Yep.
The Crusades happened, and they used violence in Jesus' name. St. Francis quits the Crusades and devotes himself to preaching against war. Doctrine of discovery. You can go ahead and take over any land and pillage and murder people for Jesus, plant crosses. When Columbus is raping and mutilating in the shadow of a cross in Hispaniola, it was
Right.
the Catholic priest on his boat, Father Bartolomeo de las Casas, the first white person to ever do an act of protest in this hemisphere, and it was against Columbus. Christianity propped up slavery, And it was Jesus followers like Harriet Tubman, like Frederick Douglass, like the Quakers who fought it. Christianity propped up segregation. And it was Jesus followers like the Baptist minister from Atlanta, Martin Luther King, and his many allies, Christians and non-Christians alike. Throughout the whole of history, it's always been these Jesus followers and their non-Christian allies who have to beat back the batshit Christians. How many people have we seen talk their parents and grandparents out of so much homophobia over the last 30 years? This is the struggle that's always been there. And some of the greatest Christians I know aren't Christian. And so, I mean, Zoran Mamdani's agenda is so much closer to Jesus than all the so-called Christians who can't stop bearing false witness against him. So, to me, it's like, go ahead, brag all you want about your spiritual piety. But when we all pick and choose the parts of our holy books we want to believe. But when you're picking and choosing to justify cruelty and being a dick, then it's time to thump Bible thumpers with the Bible.
Right. So, like, how do they even stand themselves? That's the thing that I don't understand. It's so
Because they
clear.
know God likes them better. God likes them better. That's
You
their
think?
belief. They don't think they're better than you. They think God thinks they're better than you.
No,
that's the
but that's
fundamentalist
not
Muslims, the fundamentalist Jews.
Yeah.
It's always the same.
Well, it's like their
Hey,
God.
we are the chosen people, you know. We're the chosen people. Sorry.
Right.
I remember fighting with my rabbi about that. I'm like, how do you know that? How do you know that? Because it
Well,
says
God
so in
said
the Torah.
It says it. Yeah.
Did the Torah fall out of the sky? No, it didn't. If the Torah fell out of the sky, it really would have hurt people too, because it's in a lot of big scrolls. You know what?
But
One
when
of
you
the
look at...
other.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, it's just one of the other, like, something that I have said repeatedly over the years that you also say in your book is that the Bible was written like the game of telephone, where you say something to somebody and then, like, down the line it's something completely different. And that's how we get this hypocrisy when people are quoting the Bible, because they're misquoting it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Jesus said, welcome the stranger, MAGA herd, build a wall. And that's fundamentalism, right? Like, our atheist friends love to say, oh, religion's responsible for all the oppression of women and homophobia and violence. And I always got to say, well, hang on a second now. And I love atheists. I believe in them. But it's not religion that's responsible for all that. It's the fundamentalist wings of all the world's religions. So the more extreme conservative your religion is, the more you're the religion causing all the problems. It ain't the liberal and moderate Jews and Muslims and Christians causing all of these interesting situations around the world. It's the fundamentalists. And the more right-wing you are in your religion, the more you believe the same 5 things. Women are second-class citizens. Sorry, it's how God wants it. I didn't make the rules, right?
Yeah.
Conservative Hindus, conservative Christians, conservative Muslims, the more to the right you are, the more women are second-class citizens, the more sex is bad, unless it's for procreation. But if women and gays are enjoying it, very bad. The more violence is okay if it's my side doing it, because I'm on the side of God, and if you're against me, you're obviously on the side of Satan, so violence is allowed for my tribe. There's always a focus on punishment instead of healing. And finally, a penchant for victimhood that justifies any kind of shitty behavior. We have been oppressed. My tribe has been oppressed, so I get to be as mean to you as I want. Christians are being persecuted all over the place, so I get to persecute whoever I feel like right now. And there's nothing going on, nothing liberals are doing in any way that victimizes them. There's nothing that's happened that's curtailed conservative religious practice. They're mad because they want conservative religious domination of culture.
That's it.
And that's what all this victimhood is about.
Right.
And they want this to be a Christian nation, which it's not. And you write about that in the book, and that the first House of Representatives rejected the first Senate when they wanted to declare this a Christian nation. And they were like, no, that's what we started this nation for. So everyone can go do what they want to do. And as long as they're not forcing it on other people, it's all good. And yet here we are.
And not to put too fine a point on it, but when you are owning people as slaves, you don't get to pretend your society's Christian. You just don't.
Right. Well, I think that they knew that too, but they had so many blind spots just to be able to write all men are created equal. They didn't consider any other. They didn't consider themselves hypocrites. Men are white men. Men are rich white men. Not
the same document that says all men are created equal contains the words merciless Indian savages.
Yeah.
The same document says both phrases. Yeah.
Right.
And they thought they were fine. I go deep in this book about the biblical justifications for slavery. Because they don't care. They just well, it's in the Bible somewhere, right? Okay, then we're good.
Slaves be good to your masters. It says it right there. And, I always find that the...
Context doesn't matter.
Exactly. But the conservatives, their God is very small and puny. That's why I mean, he knows every hair on your head. He knows all the mysteries of the universe, but he gives a shit whether you masturbate, I mean, right?
I don't think he micromanages if there is such a being. I think
I know. I'm focused on masturbation a lot today.
I know. That's the whole story. He created the heavens and the earth in 6 days and couldn't find 2 naked people hiding in the woods. What's this guy's priority? I don't understand.
Yes, and you said something else about how God created woman out of Adam's rib, and I really appreciated that. What can you elaborate?
Tell that one, because the line there is so great.
It's one of my favorites about the literalism. I have a whole chapter called "Thou shalt not take all of this too literally," because no one believes all of it. Anyone who says they believe all of it either hasn't read all of it or is lying to you. No one believes all of it. I mean, you have to believe that fallen angels mated with human females and created a race of giants. That's in Book of Genesis. They don't put that in the coloring books, but yeah. So I always like using Genesis 1 and 2. It's one of my favorites. I'll do a quick version when you're when you have your right-wing uncle come over, the really right-wing one who's still mad about Pride Month and it's Thanksgiving, that one. They got these people who really care about the talking snake, right? That's Genesis is literal fact. You have to believe this. Creationism is literal fact. When I was a kid, I used to go crazy. I used to be, what the hell does this have to do with what Jesus said? Jesus brought a new covenant and said we're supposed to take care of the poor and take care of the less fortunate and forgive our enemy. What the hell does a talking snake? I would get so angry, and I would talk about science and the Human Genome Project, and they would just be like, "Were you there? Were you there?"
Yeah, well, they weren't there either.
Much easier to just do this. Just say to them when you have your uncle racist who believes in the Genesis and his wife Aunt Dead inside, the talking snake people, and they believe that. Believing in the talking snake is necessary to believe in Jesus. They have something to do with each other somehow. I always say, well, which Genesis are we talking about? Because in Genesis chapter 1, God makes Adam and Eve together at the same time, in his image, man and woman in his image at the same time. But in Genesis chapter 2, God makes man first, and then gave man a big butch job of giving names to all the animals. And then man realized that he couldn't mate with any of these animals. And that was the most terrifying part of my childhood, was that part of the... What the hell was Adam trying to... How was Adam trying to find out who would be a suitable... Who got the rose in this ceremony? Good God. Adam's hooking up with badgers and goats and ferrets. And so
everyone else on the ark before he found
God puts Adam to sleep, reaches in, takes Adam's rib, and fashions that into the first woman, Eve. So just ask your fundamentalist loved one, which one do you believe? Genesis chapter 1, that they were created together, or Genesis chapter 2, that man was here first? It's two totally different stories. It is not possible to believe them both. You have to choose which one you believe and which Bible story you reject. And 9 times out of 10, your uncle racist will say, I believe man was here first and God took his rib and made Eve. And that's when you say, oh, so you think the first ever woman transitioned from a man. Try it.
Boom.
Try it.
Boom. Drop that mic on your uncle racist.
That's it.
Also,
Thanksgiving.
If it was just Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel, where'd the rest of the people come from?
I could talk about that all day. Yeah.
I'm just asking questions here.
I got a whole chapter on literalism. I have a whole chapter on literalism.
Right.
Because again,
and
literalism has nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus. There's so much incest. There's so much rape. It's all in
and getting your father drunk to have sex with him. Well, that's the Old Testament.
That's there
Sodom,
too. Yeah. That's Sodom and Gomorrah. So again, if you believe Sodom and Gomorrah, then you believe that offering up your own daughters for gang rape is acceptable, because that's what Lot does.
Yeah.
You believe that that Lot having sex with both of his daughters and them getting pregnant and giving birth to their sibling babies, you believe that's acceptable. But a gay couple going antiquing, that's your problem, right? Sodom and Gomorrah is not okay. And it's not even about being gay. It's about gang rape. It's about a mob trying to gang rape angels, and rape is not about lust or sexuality. It's about power.
And it's about, I mean, the sin of Sodom is inhospitality. That's what they
Correct.
were.
Ezekiel.
Yeah.
Ezekiel says it. Yes, Ezekiel
Yeah.
says it, and it doesn't mention same-sex
Right.
relationships at all.
Because at the time, if you
Sodomy-
were a traveler, you depended on the kindness of others. There weren't any, Motel 6s around, so you had
That's
to.
why
Yeah.
the God of the Hebrew Scriptures commands us to look out for each other
Yeah.
repeatedly. Travelers, immigrants, strangers, you have to treat them as one of your own. They're not really fans of this book.
No.
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 So here we are at a time where the entire Republican Party is very invested in a cover-up of a sex trafficking pedophile ring funded by the Russians. And every single day we get a new story about this. It's not real. It's real, but it's this. I'm not in it, but they are. They're not in it, but I am. Oh, no, now it's a hoax. How would you have us use your book in a way to push back against those who are continuing to protect Trump regardless of the information we already have? Between the
Do we
E.G.
know it was the
Carroll-
Russians? Do we know the Russians were behind Epstein? Because I would love that if that was true. That would make my evil Fantasia even greater.
My Senator Ron Wyden has just wrapped up a 3-year investigation into Russian banks funding the Epstein sex trafficking ring and have found 4,275 wire transfers betwixt. And so that might be, and the Trump administration doesn't feel that's something worth investigating. But thankfully, my Senator Ron Wyden believes that it does. And there's about a 7-minute video you can watch right now on YouTube that my senator put out just a few days ago that I'm sure the Republicans would love for everyone to ignore. But while we're working on that, how may we use your text when we are getting trolled by real people, not just bots?
Yeah,
real people like Nancy Mace. I would like Nancy Mace to read your book very
She's
much.
Another one.
Yeah, I'd like a
because
journalist
she's
interviewing
protecting,
Nancy Mace.
right?
Yeah.
So how we can use your book to guide us in this moment, because we have these so-called Christians protecting this. I don't want to say alleged because it's real, but we know he's raped women. We know he's done bad things. How would you have us use your book in a way that we can have real meaningful conversation around this, because it's real?
Well, first off, there's no way that MAGA can hide behind Jesus. Okay, I wrote this book because I'm tired of these people using my parents' religion and hiding behind it for this anti-Jesus cruelty. And when it comes to MAGA, you can try reason, you can try morality. I like to try questions. And my favorite question
I do that
is,
too.
to all of them, I say, and this is what I would like the media to start asking every Republican in our government: please cite one actual teaching of Jesus that Donald Trump and the MAGA movement fight for. Legislatively, politically.
Hello.
Chapter and verse, something Jesus actually taught or commanded that the MAGA movement prioritizes. If you do this, if you phrase it correctly, you will see how little your loved ones know about this Bible. Now, the most common answer I get is abortion. And that's when I have to explain the Bible's not against abortion. They're legal and free in Israel because Jesus' religion of Judaism never banned it. So then the second most thing they'll say is strong border. And that's when you say the only commandment about borders or immigration in the entire Bible are the commandments to welcome the stranger.
Right.
I mean, consistently, Old Testament and New, there's no ambiguity about it. You don't get to build a wall and claim you follow this book. So the third most common thing you'll get, this is really true, I get this all the time, Trump moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Wow. And that's when I have to politely explain that at no point in the book does Jesus, in the year 33 A.D., reference the United States or where our embassy should be 2,000 years from now. They haven't read it. So just by asking questions, you can reveal it. I mean, you'll show these people are propped up behind a theology of me, and God likes me better because I'm special. And again, I'm a big fan of Jesus. I hope this conversation has shown it. But I'm not a fan of lazy, selfish, racist people who hide behind his name to have an agenda that has nothing to do with his actual teachings. These people despise a society that cares for the least of us. They call it Marxism.
Right.
It's like when they say God spared Donald Trump's life.
Oh,
in
God
Butler,
help us.
But the retired firefighter. Fuck the retired firefighter, though.
That's it. Anyone who says that is saying that God wanted that poor bastard sitting behind Trump to catch a bullet in his head in front of his kids. And make them say it. Did God
Yeah.
want
no, I
Corey
do that.
Comparator?
I do.
And learn his name, by the way, because MAGAs don't know his name, Corey Comparator.
Corey
Did God want
Comparator.
him to catch a bullet in front of his
right.
kids?
Yeah, he's
And
completely
and by the
forgotten.
way, why can't we see Donald Trump's hospital report from the
There
bullet
you
he
go.
was
Could
one-
you imagine if
because
that
there
was
was
Joe
one.
Biden?
It was
Nobody.
Dave.
Yeah, and we would just
Jake
take.
Tapper would have written 4 books by
forget
now.
about
Jake Tapper would have written 5 books by
Right.
now.
And
Oh
they,
my
I mean,
God.
to take the word of who's son? Ronnie Jackson, who wasn't even a practicing doctor at the time. He wrote a couple of paragraphs that his ear got grazed or whatever. I mean, and
No.
Yeah.
this is
No.
another cover up. That there's just different rules. And anyway, well, I'm just. It's
Yeah.
beyond. I wanted to ask you one other thing about what do you think about the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and those Gnostic so-called gospel? I'm sure you've heard of them, right? And they were.
I talk about her a bit in the book because, she was obviously a threat to the patriarchy of the church. She is never described in the Bible as a prostitute in any way. And Pope Gregory decided that Mary Magdalene was the weeping, shamed woman who came to Jesus and cried and wet his feet with her tears and dried them with her hair. And Simon, the Pharisees, was like, "Oh, this woman's no good." And Jesus is like, "Shut up." And it never says that was Mary Magdalene. And it never says that woman was a prostitute. They made it all up.
Right.
I have a
To
whole chapter in this
denigrate
book
her,
called, I have a whole section about the biblical Hall of Fame of slut shaming and the top women who are
Yep.
slut shamed throughout this book. And Mary Magdalene, I
Yes,
had to give
you
her own section because she was another one who actually subsidized Jesus's ministry. She was a woman whose money kept this movement afloat, and her reward in history has been that she's been called a prostitute for 2,000 years.
Incredible. Right. Well,
That's
because there was
that's
they were
deeply insecure men running a church.
exactly, and it just seems like their God is just a version of their own bigoted selves, and they've distilled
Always.
their only holy obligation is gay bashing and bashing the other and hate and division.
Yeah, it's always like the drunken alcoholic stepgod. That's who they always
Yeah.
follow.
And just to
Yeah.
even the statement, Jesus is he doesn't mince words. When he says that it will be easier for a rich man to go through the eye of a needle than to get into heaven. What does that mean? Of course.
Well, they try to get around that too. I have a whole thing in the book on that. Like the last couple of decades, there's been this whole movement saying, well, actually in Jerusalem there was a gate called the Eye of the Needle where your camel would
Jesus
have to
Christ.
kneel to
Oh
go
my
through.
Christ,
So
shut
Jesus is
up.
saying it wasn't impossible; it was just a challenge. And I'm like,
Wow.
you're just saying Jesus sucked at metaphor. You're just saying Jesus was shitty at metaphor. That's all you're doing. There was no such gate. There was never a gate called the
Wow.
Eye of the Needle.
That's
But
desperate.
again, these people
Yeah.
worship earthly riches and wealth and earthly power so much, and that's fine. Go ahead and do it, but don't pretend you're following this movement
There
when you're
you
talking
go.
some bullshit like that.
No. Then the hypocrisy and the way that they manufacture outrage by quoting, like they're mad that Cynthia Erivo played Jesus in a production of Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
They're
more
not
mad
mad-
about a black woman
Right.
singing Broadway show tunes than you are about Donald Trump raping
That's
little
right.
girls.
That's
what you're
right.
mad
Yeah,
about.
but can I just say about that?
That's what makes
did you
me
notice that?
mad.
But they've never once been angry about white, blue-eyed men with British accents speaking English playing Jesus.
No.
There
That's
you
never
go.
bothered them at all, right?
With a
That's
Swedish
right.
accent.
Right? Like,
With a Swedish,
yeah,
like you point out, like
probably.
Max von Sydow playing Jesus, and he's like,
And Max von Sydow
Yes,
plays
it's
him
all
in the
to
greatest
me.
story ever told. And Max von Sydow is great in the greatest story ever told. That's a white Jesus with a Swedish accent, speaking English
Right.
with a Swedish accent
That's
in the Holy
funny.
Land.
Right.
But Cynthia Erivo, who skin tone wise is probably a lot closer to the real
a
Jesus.
lot closer. Yes.
That's objectionable
And-
for y'all.
I mean, Max von Sydow's
Crazy.
like, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. It's
And
not
he's great.
really it, right?
He's great. He's great as Jesus too. He gives a great performance. I see all the Jesus movies. He's great in it. But again, we're not offended by a white English speaking blue eyed man or Jesus
No,
of Nazareth,
right.
where he's like a
And-
British Xanax user the whole 6-hour movie.
and that
yet
whole
a woman.
The Jesus of, do you believe that actually Cesare Borgia, the image of Cesare Borgia is actually
yeah.
Jesus? Have you heard of that?
I
I'm
heard
sure you
that.
have.
I've heard that, yeah.
They kind of look alike, and the Borgia Pope repainted all of the images of Jesus to look like Cesare Borgia. But anyway,
That's right. I knew
that is a look it up. I mean, he looks
My
like
God,
Jesus.
These pathetic, insecure men. These pathetic, insecure men.
It's unreal, right?
Oh,
Separation of Church and Hate by our friend John Fugelsang comes out September 9th and can be pre-ordered right now at Amazon.com
Yes.
while you're there.
I
Pick up
pre-ordered
my
it.
book, The Sound of Settling, a rock and roll love story. Why not? Hey, John, are you doing a book tour around this great land of ours? Where can people?
I'm hoping
see you
to.
in
We're
person?
there's going to be sporadic book gigging. We're trying to see if we can turn it into a tour, but I'll be making announcements very soon.
Book gigging
right.
is good. I hope can you come to Portland and hang out with me? Can
I
we
would
do that?
love to
Can
come
we
to
make that
Portland and
happen?
hang out. I can
And then
say
we'll get
92nd
Hal.
Street Y. 92nd Street
Get-
Y in New York City on September 25th. I
Oh,
can announce that
okay.
one.
Awesome.
Any more
Oh,
dates?
great.
Awesome. I will tell
I'll
my
be
mom
there.
to go. I will tell my mom
I'm
to go
in
to
New
your
York.
book reading. Oh yeah, Devlin can go.
I can
That's
go.
Right. I wish
I
could
can go.
teleport.
Me. No,
We
I'm
need
just kidding.
teleportation. That's not fair.
All right.
John, thank you so much for being here with us. Make sure
Thank you,
everybody
John.
is following John on all the socials and tune into your Sirius XM Progress show. And you're quite the ubiquitous gentleman, John Fugelsang.
Thank you.
But
Well,
my
I've got
favorite,
some
and
tennis, so
by the
let's
way,
clear that up.
from now on, when I want to get your attention, I'm going to be like, "Hang on, Mr. Fuselage," which made me laugh out loud. That's a line
that'll
from
work.
your book that made me laugh out loud so much. And we'll have you back, and then maybe we can be on your show, and we'll just
Anytime.
keep rotating through this, and
Yeah.
we'll just
Yes.
keep
I love
having
it.
this conversation.
If I could ever
Because
pin
this
the
is-
two of you down,
Look.
Tara Devlin, if you're ever free at like 11 o'clock at night
Yeah.
to come talk politics.
This
I'd
is my
love to.
mom.
Yeah, Betty. There it is. There it is. There it is.
She was
hey,
a
everybody
twin
in
too.
the chat.
So that's
Thank
what
you,
that's.
Jim, for moderating.
That's her and her sister.
Thank you,
My-
everybody, for being here. Buy
All right.
John's book. Buy my book.
Yes.
Follow us all on the Substacks and the all of the places, and we will see you back here on
All right.
Tuesday.
See you
at
soon.
2/11. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you, John.